I'm reading David's text while looking at Richard's name on my phone. Defense approved. Official hooding ceremony is May 15th. Dr. Morrison. Can you believe it? 8 years. We did it, Em. We did it. 3 exclamation points. David never uses 3 exclamation points. My screen is bright in the dim church basement, and I tilt it away from the woman next to me, Richard's former colleague from the complet department, someone whose name I should know, but don't. She's crying quietly into a tissue. Everyone here is crying. I should text David back. Congratulations. I'm so proud of you. Come home soon. Instead, I'm staring at the message that arrived 17 minutes ago during the actual service. A text from a dead man. I love you. I wish things were different. Always are. Richard died 4 days ago. Massive heart attack in his office on a Tuesday afternoon, slumped over a stack of first-year essays he'd never finished grading. He was 52 years old. David called me sobbing from the department office, barely able to speak. He's gone, Em. Hayes is gone. I can't believe he's just gone. I had to pull over on Route 2. I sat in my car in a CVS parking lot and made sounds I've never made before. Sounds that came from somewhere animal in my chest, while David cried on the other end, telling me how much Richard meant to him. How Richard saved his academic career. How Richard was like a father. I know, baby, I managed. I know he meant everything to you. But Richard had written this text, scheduled it somehow, maybe knowing his heart was failing, maybe just as one of his romantic gestures. Set it to send on November 14th, 6 years to the day after our first real conversation. 6 years since the department holiday party, where we stood by the terrible wine table and talked about Sylvia Plath for 20 minutes, while David networked with grad students across the room. The message appeared right as the minister was saying, Richard Hayes was a man of profound dedication. My phone is on a family plan with David. Every text shows on the bill. Every number, every timestamp. I'm still staring at it when David appears beside me. His eyes are red, his cheap funeral tie slightly crooked. He looks young, so young, in his one good suit that we bought at Men's Warehouse 3 years ago for conferences. At 25, he has a PhD from Harvard. At 27, I'm in love with his dead advisor. You okay? David asks, pulling me into a hug. I'm shaking. I know you liked him too. This is so awful. I can barely look at my husband because I'm sobbing harder than Richard's brother. Harder than the department chair. Harder than anyone who has a right to grieve this much. I barely knew him, I managed to say, and it's the truest lie I've ever told. David holds me tighter. He thought the world of you. He always asked about you. Remember how he'd always say, you were wasted on high school students? The thing in my chest tears wider. Let me get you some water, David says. You need to sit down. He disappears into the crowd of mourners, and I'm left standing there with 2 messages on my phone. One from my husband, celebrating the culmination of 8 years of brutal work. One from the man I loved, saying goodbye from beyond the grave. I should delete it, right now, before David sees the phone bill, before the scheduled text becomes evidence of what I've been for 5 years. But I can't. It's the last thing Richard will ever say to me. So let me tell you how I became this person. Let me tell you how I stood at my lover's funeral, being comforted by my husband, holding both their words in my hand, unable to let go of either. I met David Morrison when I was 21 and he was 19 in a 400-level Victorian literature seminar at Boston University that he absolutely should not have been allowed into as a sophomore. But David was brilliant, the kind of brilliant that makes professors bend rules and other students resent you. He sat in the front row and asked questions that made our 60-year-old professor pause and reconsider his interpretations. I sat 3 rows back and thought he was insufferable for approximately 2 weeks. Then I actually talked to him after class one day. We were both waiting for the elevator in the English department building, and I made some sarcastic comment about his question about Middlemarch being deliberately provocative. Was it that obvious? He grinned. He had this smile that transformed his whole face, made him look less like an academic prodigy and more like someone who still got carded at R-rated movies. Professor Mitchum was falling asleep. I wanted to see if he was paying attention. He wasn't. He's been recycling the same lectures since 1987. I know, I've seen his notes. My brother took this class 8 years ago. We got coffee. Then we got dinner. Then we were dating. David was unlike anyone I'd ever been with. He was younger than me, but somehow older. He'd started college at 16, lived more in books than in the world, had anxiety attacks before presentations, but could recite entire Yeats poems from memory. He was sweet and earnest and looked at me like I was the only thing keeping him tethered to earth. Maybe that should have been a warning sign. But I was 21 and graduating into an economy that had no use for English majors. And David was brilliant and devoted and made me feel necessary. When he got into Harvard's PhD program, early admission, rare exception for someone so young, I was proud. When he asked me to move to Boston with him, I said yes. I got a teaching job at a decent public high school in Somerville. David started his PhD at Harvard at 20 years old. We moved into a tiny apartment in Cambridge that cost more than my monthly salary. David contributed what he could from his stipend, $28,000 a year, that Harvard expected him to live on in one of the most expensive cities in America. I paid most of the rent. I also paid for groceries and utilities and the emotional labor of keeping David Morrison functional. The PhD broke him in ways I wasn't prepared for. The panic attacks started 3 months in. He'd wake up at 3 a.m., convinced he didn't belong there, that Harvard had made a mistake, that everyone knew he was a fraud. I'd hold him and tell him he was brilliant, that he deserved to be there, that his work mattered. I edited his papers. I talked him through comprehensive exams. I made flashcards for his orals. I became less of a girlfriend and more of a support system, a cheerleader, a mother therapist secretary who also happened to share his bed. When David proposed on my 24th birthday, nervous and sweet, with a ring he'd saved for months to buy, I said yes because I loved him. And because I'd already invested 3 years in keeping him alive and functional. And what was the point of stopping now? We got married at Cambridge City Hall on a Tuesday afternoon. My parents flew in from California. His mom came down from Maine. We had dinner at a nice Italian restaurant in the North End, and David gave a toast about how I was his anchor, his reason, his everything. I was 24 years old, and I thought this was what marriage was supposed to be. Useful, necessary, important. I thought being needed was the same thing as being loved. I met Richard Hayes at a department holiday party in December, 3 months after our wedding. David had been assigned a thesis advisor. A big deal. The moment that determined the trajectory of your entire academic career. Dr. Richard Hayes was distinguished, published, tenured. He specialized in modernist poetry, exactly David's focus. David was terrified of disappointing him. "You have to meet him," David said, gripping my hand as we walked into the faculty lounge at Warren House. "He's going to be so important to my career. Please be charming." I was wearing a dress from Target and shoes that hurt. The room was full of academics in expensive casual blazers, drinking wine and discussing theory. I felt 24 and undereducated and very aware that I taught high school English to teenagers who couldn't name 3 Shakespeare plays. Then I met Richard. He was tall, gray at the temples, wearing a tweed jacket that somehow didn't look ridiculous. 52 years old, but looked younger. He shook my hand and smiled, warm, genuine, and said, "Emma, David talks about you constantly." "Probably complaining," I said. "Quite the opposite. He credits you with his survival." David beamed and immediately got pulled into a conversation with another grad student. I was left standing with Richard Hayes, holding a plastic cup of terrible white wine, trying to think of something intelligent to say. "What do you teach?" he asked. "10th grade English, Romeo and Juliet, To Kill a Mockingbird, the classics that make teenagers want to die." He laughed. "I remember that age. Everything feels too much and not enough simultaneously." "Exactly." I took a sip of wine. How do you make 16-year-olds care about literature when they're more concerned with Instagram likes? Do you care about literature? Of course. Then you show them why you care. Passion is contagious, even to teenagers. He paused. What are you reading right now? For yourself, not for class? Nobody ever asked me that anymore. David only talked about academic texts, theory, what he was being assigned. My colleagues at school discussed lesson plans and standardized testing. My friends from college were scattered across the country, pursuing careers, having babies, living lives I only saw on social media. Sylvia Plath, I said. I'm rereading The Bell Jar. Richard's face transformed. Because? Because I'm 24 and married and teaching someone else's curriculum, and sometimes I feel like I'm suffocating under a bell jar of my own making. I don't know why I said that. I hadn't even articulated it to myself before that moment. Richard looked at me with something I hadn't seen in a long time. Interest. Real interest. Not David's anxious need or my students' board compliance or my principal's performance evaluations. Someone was actually curious about what I thought. We talked for 20 minutes. About Plath, about Ariel, about the particular suffocation of being a woman trying to be everything to everyone. About teaching, and whether it was enough. About poetry and rage and the impossibility of domesticity. David found us eventually, apologizing for abandoning me. Richard smiled and said, Your wife is delightful. You're a lucky man. I know, David said, putting his arm around me. She's the only reason I'm surviving this program. We left shortly after. In the car, David was elated. Hayes really liked you. That's so great. He's going to be so important to my career. I'm glad you two got along. I stared out the window at Cambridge sliding past. Yeah, he seems nice. And the next morning, I got an email. Emma, it was lovely meeting you last night. David is lucky to have you as a partner. If you're ever in the area and want to discuss literature or teaching or Plath, my door's always open. The academy can be isolating, and good conversation is rare. Best, Richard Hayes**. I read it 3 times before responding. Dr. Hayes, thank you for the conversation. It's been a while since someone asked what I'm reading for pleasure rather than pedagogical value. I'd love to continue the discussion sometime. Best, Emma. I told myself it was networking. Faculty connection, David's career. I told myself a lot of things that year. The emails were innocent. Book recommendations, discussion of poems, teaching strategies. Richard had taught undergraduates for 20 years before focusing on graduate students, and he had insights about reaching students who didn't think they cared. After 2 months, he asked if I wanted to meet for coffee. David was thrilled. Hayes wants to get coffee with you? That's amazing. He never socialized with grad students' families. He must really like you. We met at a café near Harvard Square on a Saturday morning. 2 hours discussing Adrienne Rich and Anne Sexton and whether anger could be beautiful. Richard treated me like an intellectual equal, not like David's support system or someone's high school teacher. He asked my opinion and actually waited for the answer. Coffee became a monthly thing, then bi-weekly, always public, cafes, the MFA, once a bookstore in Porter Square. Always about literature, teaching, ideas. Never about our personal lives, except in the abstract. Then the emails became texts. Quicker, easier. A poem he thought I'd like. An article about education policy. A question about a line from The Wasteland. Do you think Eliot actually believed in redemption, or was he just performing faith? Performing. Definitely performing. The conversion to Anglicanism was aesthetic, not spiritual. I knew I liked you. Little conversations throughout the day. Nothing David wouldn't see. He could pick up my phone anytime, read anything. It was just texts. Just friendship. Until it wasn't. The first I love you happened 14 months after we met. I was in my 3rd year of teaching, David in his 4th year of PhD work. It was February, one of those Boston winters that makes you forget the sun exists. David was spiraling. Comprehensive exams were approaching, and he was convinced he'd fail, that Harvard would expel him, that 8 years would be wasted. He'd stopped sleeping, started snapping at me when I suggested he take breaks. You don't understand the pressure, he said one night, after I asked him to come to bed at 2 a.m. You have a job, a normal job. This is my entire future. I went into the bathroom and cried as quietly as I could. My phone buzzed. Richard, how are you holding up? I don't know why I answered honestly. Maybe because it was 2 a.m. and I was exhausted. Maybe because I knew he'd actually want to know. I'm tired. David is falling apart, and I'm supposed to hold him together, but I don't know if I can anymore. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. You're allowed to be tired. You're allowed to need support too. I stared at that text for a long time. Nobody asked if I'm okay. I'm just supposed to be okay. I'm asking, are you okay, Emma? I wasn't. I hadn't been okay in a long time. We texted until 4 a.m. about marriage and expectations and the invisible labor of being someone's emotional support system. About how loving someone and losing yourself could happen simultaneously. About how I'd become a side character in David's story. The devoted wife in the acknowledgments. The reason he could succeed, never the protagonist of my own life. Richard said, "You're more than his support system. You know that, right? You're brilliant and insightful, and you deserve to be seen." I cried reading that. Actually cried. Thank you. I needed to hear that. I mean it. I see you, Emma. The next day, David passed his comps. He was elated, grateful, apologetic for being difficult. He took me to dinner and thanked me for putting up with him. I couldn't do this without you, he said, holding my hand across the table. You're everything to me. I smiled and said I was proud of him. That night, Richard texted, I hope you know how extraordinary you are. And I texted back, you make me feel like I matter. The I love you came 3 months later. May. Spring in Boston, when the city finally remembers it's beautiful. Richard texted, I know this is inappropriate. I know I shouldn't say it, but I have to be honest. I'm in love with you. I stared at my phone for 10 minutes. David was in the library. I was alone in our apartment, grading essays about The Great Gatsby, trying to explain to 17-year-olds why Daisy chose Tom. I knew what I should do. Delete the text. Tell Richard we needed boundaries. Stop meeting for coffee. Protect my marriage. Instead, I wrote, I love you too. I have for months. His response came immediately. I never meant for this to happen. Neither did I. We can't act on this. You understand that, right? I would never ask you to... I know, I wouldn't. We won't. But I can't stop feeling it, Gartha. Neither can I. We established rules, never physical. That would make it real betrayal. That's what I told myself. Never in private spaces. Never anything David couldn't theoretically see. Just conversation. Just texts. Just the emotional intimacy I wasn't getting at home. Just falling in love with someone who wasn't my husband. I love you became part of our daily vocabulary. Good morning, I love you. Good night, I love you. I love you like breathing, like syntax, like something so constant it stopped feeling like a choice. David never suspected. Why would he? Richard was his mentor, his advisor, a man he called like a father. And I was his devoted wife, the woman who edited his drafts and managed his anxiety and made his career possible. I was good at being two people, better than I ever thought I could be. Years 4 and 5 blurred together. David worked on his thesis, 437 pages on modernist poetry and the performance of faith. Richard guided him through it, meeting weekly, offering notes, being the mentor David needed. And Richard texted me every day, I love you. 37 times a week for over 2 years. More than 1,000 I love you that David never knew existed. We met for lunch at the MFA, the Museum of Fine Arts, because it was public and cultural, and David knew I went there sometimes to clear my head. We'd stand in front of paintings and text each other observations instead of speaking out loud, even when we were 3 feet apart. Ridiculous. Adolescent. Hours. The Sargent portraits always look like people performing wealth rather than living it, I'd text, standing in the American wing. Like Eliot performing faith? Richard would respond from across the gallery. Exactly like that. Then we'd meet in the café, discuss books, maintain plausible deniability. Richard told me about his wife, Sarah, dead 6 years from ovarian cancer at 46. They'd never had children. She wanted them, he said once. I always said later, then later ran out. He asked about my marriage only once. Are you happy? I'm useful, I said. That's not what I asked. I didn't answer. We never discussed the future. Never made plans beyond next week's coffee. Never acknowledged that what we were doing was building a relationship more intimate than most marriages. Text by text, hour by hour, I love you by I love you. David grew more confident as his thesis progressed. Less anxious, more excited. Richard was proud of him, genuinely proud. He's going to be a star, Richard told me once. His work on Elliot is groundbreaking. I was proud too. David was brilliant. He deserved success. But when he came home excited about his work, eager to share insights, I'd already discussed them with Richard that afternoon. I'd nod and smile and pretend I was hearing it for the first time. When David had breakthroughs, he'd call Richard to share them. Then Richard would text me, "Your husband just had a brilliant realization about the wasteland. I wanted to tell you first." We were building something around David, a structure he couldn't see but held him up. I told myself it wasn't betrayal because it wasn't physical. I told myself I was still a good wife. I supported David, loved David, helped David. The thing with Richard was separate, compartmentalized, harmless. I told myself a lot of lies. Last October, David finished his thesis. 8 years of work, 437 pages, footnotes and citations and arguments that would determine his entire academic future. He asked me to read it before he submitted it to his committee. "I want you to see it first," he said, "before anyone else." I sat on our couch for 6 hours and read every word. It was brilliant, original, everything David had worked for. The dedication page was simple. To Emma, who believed when I didn't. And the acknowledgments, to Dr. Richard Hayes, my advisor, mentor, and friend. Your guidance shaped not just this thesis, but who I am as a scholar and human. You never gave up on me when I wanted to give up on myself. I am forever grateful for your fatherly wisdom. This work exists because you made me believe it could. I started crying. David thought it was because I was moved. You really meant it, he said, hugging me. All those years. You never stopped believing in me. I'm so proud of you, I managed. And I was. I genuinely was. But that morning, Richard had texted, "I love you. I wish I could wake up next to you every day instead of just wishing you good morning from across the city." And I'd responded, "I love you too. Always." David submitted the thesis on October 30th, Halloween. He was elated. It's done. 8 years. It's finally done. We celebrated with dinner at Legal Seafoods. His choice, moderately priced, something we could almost afford. He held my hand across the table and talked about next steps. Defense, job market, tenure-track positions, where we might move. Maybe Oregon, he said. They have a great program. Or maybe California, closer to your parents. I smiled and nodded and thought about Richard saying, "I wish things were different." My phone buzzed. "Richard, congratulations on David's submission. His work is exceptional. You should be proud." "I am." I texted back under the table, "I love you." "I love you too." David paid the check. We went home. We made love, celebratory, affectionate, the kind of married sex that's more about connection than passion. And I felt guilty, finally, for the first time in years. Not guilty enough to stop, just guilty enough to notice. Richard died on November 10th, a Tuesday. I was teaching Romeo and Juliet to sophomores who didn't care. My phone rang during 4th period, David's ringtone. I let it go to voicemail. He called again, and again. I stepped into the hallway. "David, I'm teaching. Hayes is dead." His voice was broken, childlike. He had a heart attack in his office. "He's dead, Em. He's just dead." The hallway tilted. I grabbed the wall. "What?" "This morning, around 10. They found him at his desk. They called his brother. Then they called the department. He's gone." David was crying. Full sobs. I can't believe it. I just saw him yesterday. We were discussing my defense strategy. He was fine. He was fine. I made it to the faculty bathroom before I started screaming. Not crying. Screaming. The kind of sounds you make when something essential is ripped out of your chest. I shoved my fist in my mouth to muffle it, sat on the bathroom floor and shook. Richard was dead. Richard, who said good morning to me every day, who texted me poetry at random moments, who made me feel seen and valued and loved, who said I love you 37 times a week for 3 years. Richard, who I'd never kissed, never touched, never spent a full day with, who I loved more than I'd loved anyone, including my husband. I called David back, managed to sound appropriately sad, but not destroyed. I'm so sorry, baby. I know how much he meant to you. Can you come home? I don't want to be alone. Of course, I'm leaving now. I told my principal I had a family emergency. Drove home to Cambridge in a fugue state. Found David on our couch, red-eyed, clutching his phone like a lifeline. He was only 52, David kept saying. That's so young. How does someone just die like that? I held him while he cried. Made tea, and listened to him talk about Richard's brilliance, his mentorship, how David owed his entire career to him. I don't know how to do my defense without him, David said. He was supposed to be there. He was supposed to see me finish. You'll finish for him, I said. You'll make him proud. David looked at me with so much gratitude. I'm glad I have you. I don't know what I'd do without you. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. Later, when David finally fell asleep, I checked. A calendar notification. Richard Hayes' 6-year anniversary of first conversation. Don't forget to celebrate. I'd created that reminder 3 years ago when we started saying, I love you. A private acknowledgement of something only we knew existed. I sat on our bathroom floor and cried silently for an hour. The funeral was November 14th. Episcopal Church in Cambridge, packed with academics and former students and colleagues. David wore his one good suit. I wore black and felt like I was moving through water. Richard's brother gave the eulogy. Talked about Richard's brilliance, his dedication to teaching, his loneliness after Sarah died. He never quite recovered from losing her, the brother said, but he found meaning in his work, in his students. He touched so many lives. I thought, he told me he loved me yesterday. Or, no, he died 4 days ago, but he'd written the text earlier, scheduled it to send today, our anniversary. David held my hand through the service, squeezed it during the eulogy, thought he was comforting me. At 11:47 a.m., during the minister's reflection on Richard's character, my phone buzzed. I knew what it was. I knew. I waited until we were in the church basement, drinking terrible coffee and eating grocery store cookies, before I looked. I love you. I wish things were different. Always are. The timestamp showed it was scheduled. Sent from Richard's phone automatically. He'd written it before he died, maybe weeks ago, maybe the morning of his heart attack, and programmed it to arrive today. November 14th, 6 years. My vision blurred. I made a sound. David was beside me instantly. What's wrong? Nothing. I'm fine. It's overwhelming. I know. He pulled me into a hug. I know you liked him too. This is so awful. A colleague of Richard's approached. Dr. Patricia Morrison, no relation to David. You must be Emma, she said. Richard spoke of you often. He was very fond of you. David smiled proudly. Hayes always said Emma was wasted on high school students. He meant it. He thought you were exceptionally bright. She paused. It's lovely that David had your support through the program. Richard always said that behind every successful grad student was an exceptional partner. Behind, support, partner. Never the protagonist. David's phone rang. Department chair. He excused himself to take it. I stood there holding my coffee, Richard's final, I love you, burning in my pocket. Dr. Morrison said gently, You seem very affected by this. He was important to me, I said. He was important to many people. But grief is personal. She touched my arm. Take care of yourself. David came back, distressed. The dean wants to meet tomorrow about the defense timeline. They're trying to figure out how to proceed without Hayes on the committee. It'll be fine, I said automatically. You'll be fine. We left an hour later. David drove. I stared out the window at Cambridge passing by. The streets where Richard walked, the cafes where we met, the museum where we stood in front of paintings and texted each other instead of speaking. I can't believe he's gone, David said. I keep thinking I need to email him about something. I know. Did you know he kept a photo of Sarah on his desk, even after 6 years? The secretary said he never dated after she died, just devoted himself to teaching. He loved me, I thought. He told me every day for 3 years. But I said, he must have loved her very much. That night, David fell asleep early, exhausted from grief. I sat in our bathroom with my phone, reading Richard's last message over and over. I love you. I wish things were different. Always are. I wanted to respond, to tell him I loved him too, that I wished things were different, that I'd give anything to have more time. But you can't text the dead. I scrolled up through our conversation. 5 years of messages. Thousands of texts. Good morning, I love you. Good night, I love you. Thinking of you. You make me feel alive. I wish I could hold you. I love you. I love you. I love you. And between our declarations, David's text to me, asking what was for dinner, saying he'd be late at the library, thanking me for editing his drafts. The contrast was devastating. I should have deleted Richard's number right then, erased the evidence, protected myself. But it was all I had left of him. The record of something real, even if nobody else would ever know it existed. I sat there until 3 a.m., reading 5 years of I love you, mourning something I could never publicly grieve. The phone bill came 3 days later. David was at campus, meeting with the department about his defense. I was home, supposedly grading essays, actually staring at nothing. I'd forgotten about the bill, completely forgotten. Our family plan showed every text, every number, every timestamp. 5 years of daily texts to the same number. Richard's number. Starting at exactly the time David got assigned his advisor. I stared at the pages. Richard's number appeared hundreds of times per month. More than I texted David. More than I texted my parents. More than anyone. And the final text. November the 14th, 11:47 a.m. During the funeral, I had maybe 2 hours before David came home. I could destroy the bill, say it never arrived, pay it online. But David was meticulous about records. He'd notice if the paper bill didn't come, and he could access the account online anytime. I sat on our couch and felt the walls closing in. Maybe he wouldn't check. Maybe he'd just file it away with the others. We'd been married 3 years, together 6. He'd never once questioned my phone usage. I told myself it would be fine. I told myself right up until I heard his key in the door at 4 p.m. David came in looking drained. Defense is scheduled for next Friday. They're bringing in someone from BU to replace Hayes on the committee. That's good, I said. Quick timeline. Yeah. He dropped his bag. They want to honor Hayes by making sure I finish this semester. Apparently he fought for me to defend early. He paused. Mail came? On the table. I watched him sort through it. Junk, bills, a letter from his mom, the phone bill. He opened it absently, probably just checking the total. Then he stopped. I watched his face change. Confusion. Then focus. Then something harder. M? My heart stopped. Why are there so many texts to this number? I couldn't speak. David looked up at me. This is Hayes' number. Why are you texting him hundreds of times a month? David, for years, this goes back, he flipped pages. This goes back 5 years. You've been texting my advisor 5 years? Let me explain. But he was already pulling out his phone. I'm on the account. I can see this online. I can see... His fingers moved quickly. Face illuminated by the screen. The silence stretched forever. Then David said, very quietly, You texted him during the funeral. David, please. You texted him during his funeral, while we were... He looked up. His face was white. What is this? Can we sit down? Can I explain? You texted my dead advisor during his funeral. David's voice was rising. What the fuck could you possibly explain? Please, let me... But he was scrolling, reading, his face getting paler, harder. I love you, he read aloud. I love you too. November 13th, the day before he died. You told my advisor you loved him. It wasn't, I wish I could wake up next to you every day. David's voice cracked. That's from October 30th, the day I submitted my thesis, the day I dedicated it to you. David, how long? He was shaking. How long were you fucking him? I didn't. We never. Don't lie to me. He threw his phone at the couch. It bounced, hit the floor. 5 years of I love you. And you expect me to believe you never touched him? We didn't. I swear. It was just what? Just emotional? Just texts? Just falling in love with my mentor while I was dedicating my thesis to you? His laugh was harsh. Do you have any idea how this looks? I was crying. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. When did it start? David demanded. When did you start loving him? I don't know, it just... Bullshit. When? 3 years ago. Maybe more. I don't... David stared at me. We got married 4 years ago. I know. You've been in love with someone else our entire marriage. No, it wasn't 3 years. You said I love you to my advisor every single day for 3 years while being married to me. It wasn't physical, I said desperately. We never... You think that makes it better? David grabbed the phone bill. You texted him more than you texted me. You said I love you to him more than to me. You... His voice broke. You were in love with him when I wrote your dedication. You loved him while I was thanking him for being like a father to me. The word father made him stop. His face went gray. Oh my God, he whispered. The acknowledgements. I called him a father figure. And you... He sat down hard on the couch. Did he know? About you loving him? I couldn't answer. Did he know? David's voice was deadly quiet. Yes. Did he love you back? Yes. David made a sound I've never heard a human make. Grief and rage and betrayal compressed into something animal. My mentor, my advisor, the man who guided my career, was in love with my wife. He was rocking slightly. For years. While meeting with me weekly, while reading my drafts, while writing me recommendation letters. David, he never let it affect... Don't. He held up a hand. Don't you dare defend him. Don't you dare defend either of you. Silence. I could hear traffic outside, someone's TV through the walls, normal life happening while mine imploded. Did you touch him? David asked finally. I need the truth. Did you ever become sexually involved with him? No. Did you kiss him? No. Hold hands? Anything physical? No, never, I swear. He looked at me with something like hatred. Why should I believe you? Because it's true. We had rules. We never... Rules. He laughed bitterly. You had rules for your affair. How considerate. It wasn't an affair, not like... Then what was it? What do you call daily I love yous with another man? What do you call building an entire relationship behind my back? I don't know. You don't know. He stood up, started pacing. 5 years. You've been doing this 5 years. Since he became my advisor. Since... He stopped. The holiday party. That first night. You talked to him about Plath. I didn't respond. That's when it started. That's when you decided my mentor was more interesting than your husband. That's not... Was I boring, Emma? Was I too young, too anxious, too focused on my work? His voice was rising again. What did he have that I didn't? He saw me, I said quietly. I see you. I see you every day. No, you see your support system, your cheerleader, the woman who edits your drafts and manages your anxiety. He saw me. David stopped pacing. That's bullshit. That's not fair. Maybe not, but it's true. So this is my fault? I drove you to him because I was too busy with my PhD? No, this is my fault. I made the choice. Every day for 5 years, David said. Every single day you woke up and chose to text another man, I love you. Every day you chose to be emotionally intimate with someone who wasn't your husband. Yes. While I was working, while I was struggling, while I was depending on you to hold me together. Yes. While I was thanking him for his guidance. David's voice cracked again. Do you know what that acknowledgement means to me? That dedication? It's permanent. It's in print. My thesis is submitted to the Harvard Library with your name and his name in it, the two people I trusted most, who were in love with each other while I wrote about faith and performance. He walked to his desk, came back with a printed copy of his thesis, opened to the dedication page. To Emma, who believed when I didn't. He looked at me. You didn't believe in me. You believed in him. That's not true. I'm proud of your work. You discussed my work with him before discussing it with me, David shouted. He told me once, he said, your wife already brought this up. I thought it was cute. I thought it meant you cared. But you were having deeper conversations with my advisor than with me about my own thesis. I had nothing to say to that. It was true. David closed the thesis carefully. Did you love me at all during any of this? Yes, I do love you. Don't. His voice was flat. Don't say you love me. You don't text another man, I love you, thousands of times while loving your husband. You don't build an entire emotional relationship while loving your husband. You just don't. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing. It doesn't matter. He set the thesis down gently, like it was fragile. I defend in 6 days. My thesis is dedicated to a woman who betrayed me and acknowledges a man who betrayed me while they were betraying me together. And I can't change it. It's submitted. It's permanent. David, I need you to leave. What? Get out. Go stay with someone, a friend, your parents. I don't care. But I can't look at you right now. We should talk about this. We're done talking. He walked to the door, opened it. Get out. David, please. Get out. I grabbed my purse, my phone, walked to the door in a daze. David said very quietly, did you love him more than me? I turned back. Tell me the truth. Just once. Did you love Richard Hayes more than you loved me? I could have lied, should have lied, but I was so tired. Yes, I said. Yes, I did. David closed his eyes. Thank you for being honest. Now leave. I left. I stayed at a hotel near campus. Sent texts David didn't answer. Called and got voicemail. I thought about calling my parents, but couldn't face explaining. Called my friend Sarah from college, who lived in New York now. It's been forever. David found out I was in love with someone else. He kicked me out. Silence. Then, oh my God, what happened? I told her everything. The texts, the years, the funeral, the phone bill. So you never physically cheated? Sarah asked carefully. No. But you were emotionally invested in someone else for your entire marriage? Yes. She paused. That's worse, in some ways. You chose to build a relationship with someone else every single day. That's not a mistake. That's not a moment of weakness. That's a sustained betrayal. I know. And David's advisor? His mentor? That's brutal. That's so many layers of betrayal. I know. What are you going to do? I don't know. He won't talk to me. Maybe give him space. He just found out his entire support system was a lie. She paused. Do you love David? I think so. I don't know. I loved Richard more. Richard is dead. I know. You lost both of them. I know. Sarah sighed. I'm sorry this happened. But you made these choices. You kept making them for years. This isn't something that just happened to you. I know that. Do you? Because you sound like you're still processing. Like you haven't quite grasped that you destroyed your marriage for a man you could never have. I started crying again. I'm not trying to be cruel, Sarah said gently. But you need to face this. You didn't cheat once. You didn't have an affair. You built an entire emotional life with someone else while your husband depended on you. That's not a mistake. That's who you are. I don't want to be this person. But you are. For 5 years, this is who you chose to be. We talked for another hour. She offered to let me stay with her in New York if I needed to leave Boston. I thanked her, but said no. I needed to face what I'd done. David defended his thesis on November 21st. I wasn't there, wasn't invited. He blocked me on everything after I tried texting again. I heard from a mutual friend that he passed. Highest honors. PhD granted. Dr. David Morrison at 25 years old. The thesis, with its dedication to me and acknowledgments to Richard, was accepted into the Harvard Library system. Permanent record of the two people who betrayed him while he worked. I imagine David standing in front of his committee, answering questions about faith and performance, about Elliot's conversion, about whether belief could be authentic or was always partially performed. I imagined the irony burning him alive. 3 weeks after the defense, David's best friend from the program called me. Emma, it's Marcus. I'm calling because David won't, but I think you should know. He accepted a position at University of Oregon. Tenure track. He's moving in January. Oregon? My voice sounded distant. That's across the country. Yeah, he said he needs a fresh start, away from everything here. Is he okay? No, he's devastated. He barely speaks. He filed for separation last week. You should be getting papers soon. I've never seen him like this. Did he tell you? He told me enough. About Hayes. About the texts. Marcus paused. I'm not calling to judge you. I'm calling because David asked me to get his stuff from the apartment. He doesn't want to see you. Can I come by tomorrow? Of course. And Emma, he said to tell you that he doesn't hate you. He's just done. Done. The finality of it was worse than hatred. Marcus came the next day. We barely spoke. He packed David's clothes, books, laptop, left behind the furniture we'd bought together, the wedding photos, the life we'd built. Before he left, he handed me an envelope. David wanted you to have this. Inside was a copy of his thesis. The dedication page had a sticky note. You asked if I could forgive you. I can't. Not because of hatred, because of heartbreak. You were in love with someone else when I wrote this. Every word I wrote thanking you was a lie. Every acknowledgement of Hayes was unknowingly thanking the man you loved instead of me. I can't change the dedication now. It's permanent, just like the damage. Please don't contact me. I need to move on. I sat on our couch, my couch now, and read his thesis front to back. It was brilliant, original. Everything David had worked for. Every argument was sharp, every citation perfect. The kind of work that launched careers. And on page 3, the dedication to Emma, who believed when I didn't. On page 4, the acknowledgments to Dr. Richard Hayes, my advisor, mentor, and friend. The two of us, enshrined in his life's work. The two people who destroyed him. January came. David moved to Oregon. I heard through mutual friends that he seemed lighter there, happier, dating someone from the English department, a literature professor, 5 years older, brilliant in her own right. I was still in Boston, still teaching high school, still living in our apartment because I couldn't afford anywhere else. And David didn't fight me for it. I couldn't grieve Richard publicly. Couldn't explain at school why I was devastated. Couldn't tell anyone that I'd lost the love of my life because he was someone else's husband's mentor, because it was inappropriate, because it existed only in texts I could never show anyone. Richard's office was cleared out, his books donated, his position filled by a new hire. Nobody mentioned him anymore except in passing. Oh, Hayes taught that. Before he died, like he was footnote, historical reference, someone who used to matter. I wanted to scream every time. February, March, April. I went to work, taught The Great Gatsby again, explained to students why Daisy chose Tom, why Gatsby's dreams were always illusions, why you can't repeat the past. They didn't listen. They never listened. At night, I read Richard's texts. Every conversation saved. 5 years of I love you that nobody else would ever see. I thought about deleting them, moving on, but they were all I had. Proved that someone had seen me, loved me, made me feel like I mattered as more than a support system. Even if that someone was gone, even if I destroyed my marriage for a relationship that was always impossible. David's thesis was published online through Harvard's repository in May. Public record. Anyone could read it. I read the dedication again and again. To Emma, who believed when I didn't. Except I didn't believe in David. Not really. I believed in Richard. I believed in stolen moments and texts and a relationship that existed nowhere but in our phones. I destroyed a good person's trust for something that was never real. That could never be real. And now, I'm 27 years old, separated, in love with a dead man, teaching someone else's curriculum, living in an apartment I can barely afford, the subject of a dedication I don't deserve in a thesis I helped destroy. It's November again. 1 year since Richard died. 1 year since the funeral, the text, the discovery. I'm sitting in our apartment, my apartment, with Richard's final message still on my phone. I love you. I wish things were different. Always are. I wish things were different too. I wish I'd loved my husband. I wish I'd been honest. I wish I'd ended things with Richard before it went too far. I wish I'd been brave enough to leave David before betraying him. I wish I'd made any choice other than the ones I made. But wishes don't change anything. David is in Oregon now. Happy, apparently. Dr. Morrison. His thesis has been cited already by other scholars. His career is launching. He's building a life without me. Richard is dead. No magical reunion, no alternative ending where we somehow make it work. Just gone. And I'm here. The woman who spent 5 years texting "I love you" to her husband's mentor while her husband dedicated his life's work to her. The woman who grieved harder at her lover's funeral than at her own wedding. The woman who destroyed something real for something impossible. Sarah was right. This isn't something that happened to me. This is who I am. I made these choices. Every day for 5 years, I woke up and chose to text Richard, chose to meet him at museums and cafes, chose to build an emotional intimacy with someone I could never fully have, chose to let David believe I was his devoted wife while loving someone else. I told myself it wasn't betrayal because it wasn't physical, but that's a lie. Maybe it's worse. I didn't have one moment of weakness. I had thousands of moments, thousands of choices. Thousands of times I picked up my phone and typed "I love you" to a man who wasn't my husband. David asked me once if I loved Richard more than him. I said yes. It was the most honest thing I've ever said. But Richard never left his wife's memory for me. Never chose me over his career. Never made me a priority beyond stolen conversations and scheduled texts. I was a fantasy to him. And he was everything to me. I destroyed my marriage for a man who died without ever really being mine. There's no redemption arc here. No beautiful lesson learned. No growth that makes it worthwhile. Just the knowledge that I'm the kind of person who can look her husband in the eye and say, "I love you," while texting those same words to someone else. The kind of person who can stand at her lover's funeral being comforted by her betrayed husband. The kind of person who can accept a dedication she doesn't deserve in a thesis she helped destroy. I have to live with that now. David deserved better, or Richard's memory deserved better. I deserved what I got, which is exactly nothing. I'm 27 years old, separated, alone, in love with a dead man who loved me back, but not enough. Teaching students who don't care about literature. Living in an apartment haunted by the ghost of a marriage I destroyed. And somewhere in the Harvard library system, in the digital archives, and maybe eventually in print, is David's thesis. 437 pages of brilliant analysis, with a dedication to the woman who betrayed him and acknowledgments to the man who betrayed him while they were betraying him together. That's my legacy. That's what I did. I destroyed a good person on the most important achievement of his life. While he was finishing 8 years of work, I was texting another man, "I love you." While he was thanking me for believing in him, I was believing in someone else. And now I sit here with a dead man's text and a husband who's moved 3,000 miles away to escape me, and I have to live with the knowledge of who I am. I chose wrong. Every day for 5 years, I chose wrong. That's who I am. I have to live with that now. The dedication page is still there, still public, still permanent. To Emma, who believed when I didn't. But Emma was in love with someone else the entire time. That's the truth. That's what I did. I have to live with that forever.